Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. McClintock is a 1963 Western comedy film that stars John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. It was directed by Andrew McLagan. The movie stars John Wayne's son, Patrick Wayne, Stephanie Powers, Jack Crucian, Chill Wills, and Yvonne DiCarlo. It's loosely based on William Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew. John Wayne plays the role of a cattle, timber, and mining baron named G.W. McClintock. Maureen O'Hara plays his estranged wife, Catherine, who has moved out east after suspecting that G.W. was cheating on her. She eventually comes back to his town, and the two find themselves tangled in a series of messes. It also focuses on the couple's daughter, Becky, who is played by Stephanie Powers. Once Becky comes back home after a time away at college, she brings along a suitor named Junior Douglas, who's played by Jerry Van Dyke. But she eventually falls in love with a young man who lives in her father's home named Dev, in a role played by John Wayne's son, Patrick. The script was developed by John Wayne as a way for him to express some of his political views and the way things were going in the nation at the time. In the past films, he had very little creative control. In films such as The Searchers with John Ford, all that was very limited. Another really sharp contrast in this movie is that Wayne puts a real emphasis on comedy, using the Western setting for slapstick possibilities. This was the first movie fully produced by John Wayne's son, Michael. Although Michael had worked on a lot of other films in varying capacities, this was the first one that he really produced himself. The movie was shot at Old Tucson Studios, west of Tucson, Arizona, and at San Rafael Ranch House, south of Patagonia, Arizona. As in many of the other Wayne films, he's wearing his favorite Red River D belt buckle. It can be seen in the scene where G.W. addresses the homesteaders about 10 minutes into the film, and at the end of the scene where the Comanche ride through town on their way to the last fight of Comanche around 10 minutes from the end of the movie. One of the supporting roles in the film was played by the immensely popular and beloved Yvonne DiCarlo. She played Louise Warren, a widow who moves into McClintock's home with her 2 children and serves as a housekeeper and the cook. While she had appeared in a number of starring roles in her earlier years, she was forced to accept supporting roles as her career declined, and she could have very easily missed this role if John Wayne had not intervened and insisted on her having this part. He wanted her to be cast in the film because her husband, stuntman Bob Morgan, had been seriously injured while working on the movie How the West Was Won, which John Wayne starred in. Those injuries that he received put an end to his career. Hence, John Wayne wanted Yvonne to have this role because he felt extremely sorry for her husband's career-ending injury. According to John Wayne's son and the film's producer, John Wayne really wanted to do most of his own stunts in the film. One of the stunts that really intrigued him was the one where he jumps from a hayloft down into a pile of hay below. Wayne thought that the stunt looked like it would be a lot of fun to do, and he declared to the studio that he wanted to do that one for sure himself. The studio wasn't too keen on the idea because John Wayne was one of the hottest stars in Hollywood at the time. He finally won the argument and got the chance to perform the stunt himself. Sometimes movies have to substitute other substances for their real-life counterparts, such as blood or even ice cream. In the case of this movie, the big mud hole brawl scene wasn't filmed in mud at all. In reality, the substance they used in that mud hole was a material called bentonite. It's typically something that's used for drilling oil wells, and it resembles chocolate syrup in terms of appearance and consistency. On the movie screen, it stands in as a good substitute for mud, which is usually much thicker and much harder to work with. John Wayne buffs know that he's famous for the use of the word pilgrim and the various movie lines containing that word. One of the most frequent quoted lines is, "Whoa, take her easy there, pilgrim." But as famous as he is for saying that word, he only used the term in 2 movies. The first one was The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. In that film, he says the term pilgrim 23 times. In this movie, which is the second and final time that he uses the term pilgrim, he only says it 1 time. Like the Duke in this movie, Maureen O'Hara had people to do her stunt work, but she desperately wanted to do some of it herself. The stunt that involved her jumping through the plate glass window was just deemed way too dangerous for her to do by herself. And they didn't even stop there with this one. They thought it was so dangerous that they didn't use a regular stunt woman to execute the scene. Because at the time, they felt like a man was more able to perform this stunt without getting hurt. So they called in stuntman Dean Smith to complete the stunt. All of this done while wearing a wig and Maureen's costume so that he resembled her character. There was one scene in the movie that required a whopping total of 500 longhorn steers. Since there aren't many people out there who have 500 steers handy, they had to go looking for a place to find some. They ended up getting those steers from a real unlikely source, the Mexican government. While this may be news to some, those of you who know your cattle probably knew this all along. You see, Mexican longhorns have horns that tip in an upward direction, whereas American longhorns have horns that tip more downward. John Wayne insisted that the role of the weak, insipid governor be called Cuthbert H. Humphrey, with this intention to be shown all along as a parody of the liberal Senator Hubert H. Humphrey, who John Wayne intensely disliked. During the pheasant hunting segment, John Wayne is shooting real birdshot. The pheasants were released on cue so that he knew when and where to shoot. The failure of the original copyright holder to renew the film's copyright resulted in it falling into public domain, meaning that virtually anyone could duplicate and sell a copy of this film. Therefore, many of the versions of this film that are available on the market today are often severely edited or poor quality that are sometimes second and third generation copies of the film. Stephanie Powers claims that John Ford had come to the set to direct the movie for 1 week, but the real director, Andrew McLagan, says that never happened. But he was there for the entire shoot of the movie. The influence of John Ford on John Wayne is found in this film's use of some of the devices that Ford constantly used, like the protracted barroom brawl, and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon from 1949, compared with the lengthy mudhole fight in this film used for comic relief, but that does very little to advance the plot of the film. And the final, very public confrontation between GW and Kate is reminiscent of Sean Thornton dragging Mary Kate from the train station to her brother at the threshing machine in The Quiet Man from 1952. Now, there was quite a bit of spanking going on in this movie. Maureen gets one, and so does Stephanie Powers. Maureen O'Hara states that spanking scene that she was involved in at the end of the film was carried out with so much gusto by John Wayne that she had bruises on her backside for almost a week. And you can really tell this by her reaction in the film. If you want to see a great John Wayne film that's got a lot of spunk and character to it, take a look at McClintock. I know you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.